Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. This week we're going to fit the LEDs to the visor above the windscreen. Now I asked what colour the LED should be, and I think yellow just about edged out in front. At least it has at the time I'm recording the video. So I've got some 3mm LEDs that I've given a coat of Tamiya clear orange. I find it gives the best amber colour. Yellow LEDs are a bit too, well, yellow, and orange LEDs are far too red. Right, just as most of these lighting videos start, we need to remove the bumper with its 2 screws, remove the 2 screws at the front of the cab, tilt the cab back and unplug the power and the 3 data/lighting cables. Then we can take the cab away and lift off the roof. Now the visor is held on with 3 M2 screws and nuts. When we put the cab together, we didn't tighten them up too tight, which makes life quite easy. We can reach inside the cab and press a thumb onto the screw head and loosen the nut with a nut driver. Do all 3 and the visor comes away. The visor has 2 holes for 3mm LEDs behind the lenses, which is nice, but there aren't any clamps, so we're going to need to use a bit of glue. We don't want it to be super permanent, just enough that they don't fall out, so I'm going to use some poly cement. It's not going to bond all that well to the LEDs, but it will gum them up quite nicely. Now we just need to let it dry, so I'm leaving it alone for a good couple of hours. Now for the wiring. We've got some Kynar wire to go behind the visor, which is just a very thin solid core insulated wire, ideal for areas where you need to hide it. Then to connect it to the electronics, we have a 3-pin connector with a pigtail. The pin out has a common power, then 2 sinks. So we wire up the LEDs with a common anode and then the 2 cathodes. Also, the wiring ends up at a constant current LED driver, so we don't need any resistors, which does simplify things quite a bit. So, a little bit later, we have this. The LEDs are connected up, the wires will be hidden along the top edge of the visor, and we have the 3 wires that need to connect up to the connector. We'll need to add a little bit more glue to keep the wires out of the way. Now, I would use some cyanoacrylate, but it's gone a little bit solid in a bottle. Actually, I would use odorless cyano, so it can't fog anything up, but my bottle of that is even more gone off than this one, which leaves the poly cement again. It's going to take a while to dry, as we're really not using it the way it's meant to be used. So we'll stick the wire down with some masking tape, then add a few drops of the glue. Once it's dry, it will be good enough. With the tape removed, the wires are mostly out of sight. You'd have to really try hard to see them when the visor's on the truck. However, we can disguise them further with some flat black paint. A bit on the back of the LEDs to block the light, and we can paint the wires to cover up the red ones. So, sometime later, now the paint's dry, we can solder the connector and the pigtail. Like so. Right, so to reassemble we need to flip the cab over so the washers fall down on the M2 screw threads and sit against the nuts. Then we can slot the visor in and carefully sit the cab down nose up. Then while holding the screw heads we can nip up the nuts. They don't need to be super tight, so we can get away without using a screwdriver. For the wiring, I'm just going to use a bit of blue tack for now. I do want to modify the 3D printed bit just behind the visor, so we can run the wires under it to keep them safe, but that'll have to wait. Once the wires are out of the way, we can drop the roof back on, then we connect it back up to the chassis and sit it back on its mount. For now, I'm not going to put all the screws back in, as I am hoping to do the grille lights before the next outing, but we'll see if we get time during the week. Off camera, I've added a few lines of code to the electronics, so the new LEDs do something kind of useful. So, to test, we just need to connect up a battery. Turn on the transmitter, and turn on the truck. And if I dim the lights, we can turn on the LEDs. Now I've got it set up so they're controlled with a 3-position switch, where the first position of course turns them off. Then the second position sets them to dim, which does demonstrate how directional the LEDs are. The tubes they're mounted in are quite deep, so you have to be looking at them fairly straight on to see the lights. The third position is just a very simple wig-wag at full brightness. This was all done very quickly, so it's not integrated with the rest of the lights just yet, but the idea is they'll come on with the other running lights and do strobes and wig-wags too. Nothing difficult, but again it does need a bit of time to do. And well, that's about it for this week. It's another short one, but we did make some progress, which does feel pretty good. There's been far too much talking and far too little action just lately. Right, as always then, thanks for watching. Like if you like, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment if there's something on your mind. Bye guys!